Hello and welcome to today's webcast, Securing Your Cloud-Enabled Organization, brought to you by Insight Cloud and Data Center Transformation and Palo Alto Networks. I'm Rachel Mason, Marketing Manager at Insight, and will be your moderator today. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. The webcast console you are looking at can be completely customized. You can resize or move any of the windows that you have open. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. All questions from this webcast will be captured, and there will be a Q&A during the last 15 minutes of the presentation. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the question mark icon below the presentation window. The help guide covers common technical issues. I would now like to turn this presentation over to our presenter, Tony Minelli. Tony, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Tony Minelli, Managing Principal of IT Security at Insight. Today joining us, we have Victor Aranda, Principal Security Architect, Dave Loya, Prism Access and SaaS Specialist, and then also Michael Peralt, another one of our Principal Security Architects. And today what we're going to be going through is the state of security in today's climate, experiences from the field, practical applications and solutions, client stories, available services and resources. Again, this is an interactive session, so if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat or feel free to ask. I'm going to hand it off now to Principal Security Architect Victor Aranda to go through the state of security in today's climate.
Hi, folks. I'm Victor Aranda. I wanted to take over the next couple slides, and what we're going to talk about is, as everyone practically knows, the rapid change to a remote workforce that we've all experienced, even if we were used to it, for example, and the disruption that has caused in the industry and the changes to demand around remote access solutions that the industry is responding to. And in this case, we're showcasing Palo Alto Networks Prism Access, which we'll go into in the next couple of slides. But in a nutshell, what has happened is this kind of rapid deployment and increased demand for remote access, which was already, kind of a building pressure in the industry, has sort of blown up, and the need for users to be able to connect to the resources they need to get to, and to be able to manage that in a scalable fashion from the endpoint all the way to that end resource, regardless of where it lives, whether it's on premises or in a cloud tenant or at a branch site, has become kind of a first and foremost, or a forefront concern for a lot of our customers, a lot of our clients. And so the presentation is going to cover the technologies that have been developed to kind of take the next step beyond just VPN and the raw, socket to endpoint connectivity, and to look at a holistic remote access solution that will cover both endpoints and branches and main sites and cloud tenants in a single kind of cohesive fashion, and also to be scalable so that your team doesn't have to manage 15 different tools to make sure that this all works the way it's supposed to. Just to enable that secure remote access for the workforce around the world. So currently, this rush to work remotely, in addition to the previous pre-coronavirus demand for remote work and for distance work, has exploded various considerations. So, BYOD, are there devices that people are connecting to that aren't secured or that are owned by the user or the contractor or the employee? How can we deal with highly fluctuating volumes of remote users and scale without having to go back to the well for purchase orders, licensing, and hardware? How do we identify and manage identities and grant access based upon those identities? How do we gain visibility to data, from data access to the nature of the data itself? What about working remotely and new data that's created? And then one of the big ones for me is from my past life, having managed, a large fleet of VPN profiles for different vendors. How do we create and manage accounts centrally, provision accounts, and have kind of a single, experience for all the remote access? So putting this all together is kind of a security layer or a security platform that addresses connectivity and cloud access and policies and device management and visibility in a central kind of pane of glass, to use that very frequently lauded term. But in any case, the ability to create a mesh or an overlay or a secure kind of zero trust deployment of mesh connectivity between the devices that they need to talk, devices that you have in the enterprise or on your remote access users and the resources they need to get to. So with that, I think I'll pass to David to go into the details here.
Yeah, no, perfect. I appreciate it. So what I'll start off by talking about, obviously I'll be clearly focusing on what Palo Alto, how we can help you address some of your concerns around both the current environment, which primarily focuses on the work from home, but as was mentioned, also the branch and retail offices as work is continuing to expand more into that cloud-enabled world, right? Clearly, the pandemic didn't start any of this. There had been more people working from home. That had continued to grow. There's clearly been a move across our customer base as data started moving outside of the data center into the public cloud, internet, and SaaS. And the problem that came in as that started moving is people started putting together niche products that could address specific use cases, right? So looking at the branch and retail, and this will look very familiar to all of you. You may have your own organizations may look something exactly like this, right? So your branch offices may be doing MPLS or VPNs back into the data center. Maybe there's a web proxy or a CASB proxy that gets you out to public cloud and SaaS. And then all too often, because of the complexity that comes with managing this and the poor user experience, there's oftentimes we find that there is way too much traffic that is going out completely unsecured, right? So how does Palo Alto help you address those things? So we generally talk about our firewall as a platform and how we can address all your use cases with just the platform, right? And the platform is, everyone's probably familiar. If you're not currently using it, you're at least familiar with our firewall, physical firewall platform. And this is just a multitude of ways of consuming it, right? So there's the physical firewalls, the VMs, and then what we'll be focusing on today is Prism Access. The key component that ties everything together is Panorama. So that is, as was discussed, single UI. So you can manage all your policies on, regardless of what you're using, how you're choosing to consume our firewall platform in one UI. So the nice part about that is you can create a single policy that you can push out to physical firewalls, to the VMs, or to Prism Access. And you're able to establish that policy that follows the user, regardless if they're on-prem, at home, or working remotely in a Starbucks, right? Which unfortunately isn't happening much anymore. So to give a high-level overview of what Prism Access really is, this is just your typical infrastructure that most organizations have built out today. And they've built out their infrastructure. It's going to depend on the organization, right? But maybe they have 15, 20, 30% of their employees are mobile at any given time. And so they've built an infrastructure to accommodate that, right? Unfortunately, what we've seen here recently is a move to 75, even 100% if organizations can accommodate it, of employees that are working from home. And that changes a lot of things, right? So the benefit, I guess, if you could call it that, would be branch offices. The traffic going across there is shrinking significantly. However, now everything is coming in from your mobile users. And if you're using a VPN scenario where it's always on, which is what is recommended by virtually all the vendors out there, all of the traffic now is going through the secure web gateway, through the gateway, and then moving down through the pipe and hitting your firewalls. And that, unfortunately, that traffic is sucking up a lot of your bandwidth, or a lot of our customers' bandwidth, the ones that we're talking with, because that traffic that would normally be going, all that public SaaS and web is all being backhauled to the main data center. And that traffic is going, it's bidirectional, right? So anything that's going out to the cloud will move through, and then any returns back from those web-based applications is also coming through, and that's creating quite a bit of problem. A couple of the ways that we help address this, if the limitation is really on the CPUs, if your hardware was not sized to accommodate 100% work from home, it's easy enough to add either physical or virtual firewalls to accommodate that. And that can be done very easily. But it doesn't address that internet circuit capacity gateway, right? So what does Prism Access do to help address that? Resetting the scenario, Prism Access is, for lack of a better term, is firewall as a service or edge security as a service. If you're familiar with the term SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, it is a combination of network as a service and security as a service, all built out in the public cloud. We'll address the network component here momentarily, but the way that it functions, if you're a current next-gen firewall customer Palo Alto today, and you're using our Global Protect to VPN back into the hardware, you would use the exact same agent, except you would now connect up into the Prism Access cloud. So your mobile users are connecting up in. They no longer do you have to move all of the data or backhaul all of the data back to your data center. As soon as it hits the public cloud, you get all the security policies that would normally apply in your data center out in the cloud, and now traffic can move directly out to the public cloud SaaS and web with security policies applied, but not having to go back to the data center. The only thing that's going back to the data center now would be that traffic that needs to access applications or services back in your data center, right? It's a major benefit for conserving bandwidth, but also it gives a far superior user experience. The further away your users are, the better the greater the benefit is here because they don't have that latency. Obviously, we are all praying that the pandemic resolves as quickly as possible in a safe manner, and we trust that it will. No one knows the time frame, but when it does, this same service can be used for your branch offices. With the branch office, you would just simply need to connect in via an IPsec tunnel, and we're agnostic from that standpoint. We can connect to any device that will accept an IPsec tunnel, and that just allows you to connect in back up into the Prisma Cloud. Again, you get that same benefit. You don't need a firewall on-prem if you don't need it. It saves in shipping and management, pushing out policies, having to ensure that they're accepted. Everything's pushed out directly to the cloud and is automatic, right? Again, now you're able to more efficiently route traffic without having to backhaul. The one use case that's not mentioned here is if you are looking at SD-WAN or have implemented SD-WAN, it is a great solution, but it does have security limitations. So we integrate with a multitude of VPN vendors out there. SD-WAN vendors out there to layer security on top of your SD-WAN deployment. So I mentioned we talk about the network capabilities. So globally, we are looking at, I want to say we're about 105 POPs now, but it's a greater than 100 globally. If you're a US-based company, there are 8 POPs in the US alone. The benefit there is there's always going to be a POP close by for you to connect to. It is built on AWS, but mostly on GPC. So the 2 benefits there, one, or 3 benefits really, one being the close connectivity. So there's always going to be a POP close by. The local user experience. So no longer, if you're backhauling via VPN, are you tethered to the user experience of the local data center. You get the user experience of your local area. So if you're in South America, you're going to get it in Spanish. Of course, if you're in Brazil, you'll get a Portuguese interface. US, obviously, you'll get English, so forth and so on. The additional benefit is ties back into that GPC backbone that we've been built on. So if you have users globally or even within the US that are connecting and you need to traverse back to the data center to access those services or applications that are hosted there, you'll be writing a tier 1 low latency, high bandwidth fiber, high speed fiber. So you're going to get as low latency as possible. We are, I believe, currently the only vendor that has SLAs out there for latency, and happy to talk about that if there is interest. So really at a high level, it is cloud-based. So we are dynamically scalable. We're not, we do have competitors that have attempted to build out or have built out their own infrastructure. And they have to worry about being able to scale up to meet high demands. That's not an issue that we suffer. We can scale up instantaneously, just the same reason you've probably gone out to public cloud, the same reason why we've chosen to go out there as well. We can scale up we have customers that have turned this on and spun up here locally. I'm based in Houston, 25,000 remote users, and it turned on instantaneously. There was no need to plan or scale. It all worked instantaneously as it should. Deploys quickly. Prism Access, I think there'll be some case studies talked about, but the one that I generally reference, about 3 weeks ago, we had a customer who called in, after a POC, of course. They cut a PO on Friday, and we were able to spin up and have this available and live for 25,000 users in the following Wednesday. It might have been Thursday. I'd have to go back and double check, but the turnaround is incredibly quick. It is the benefit of being a almost completely cloud-hosted solution. The only thing that would be needed, obviously, is the connectivity to your data center and the Global Protect app being pushed out. It is true next-gen firewall-based network security. So we talk about replacing VPNs and secure web gateways, but we are neither. We are that true next-gen firewall security. So we are inspecting all ports and protocols. We don't have the limitations that some of our proxy competitors have. And then lastly, what I will call out is our architecture, right? So Prism Access is fundamentally a multi-tenant architecture. Pieces like the management plane and the cloud portal and the platform operation pieces, those are all shared among customers. But with that said, we believe single tenancy for a data plane perspective is critical for both a security and a performance reason. We have some of our competitors who don't have that single tenancy on the data plane. That's where they start suffering a couple from a performance standpoint. There are many cases where customers, where one customer who is experiencing a much higher demand will inflict limitations on other customers because it is a shared infrastructure. And there's also been a few cases where there has been visibility of data that from one customer to another. Because it is completely separate, that is not an issue we suffer from either. So again, in summary, from a firewall as a service platform perspective, there's 3 ways that we can help you out. We can help scale out the physical firewalls if capacity is an issue with either physical or virtual firewalls. If you have our firewalls today and you're interested in just the VPN solution, the Global Protect, we do have a 90-day no-cost license that we can provide to help you get through these tough times. And then from a Prism Access side, if that's something you want to explore, we'd be happy to talk with you about it. But Prism Access, we have also launched no-cost professional services to get this stood up quickly for you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of this, but I will turn it over to one of my peers.
This is Michael Peralt. So I'll go ahead and talk about
Sorry about that, Michael.
No worries. I'm going to go ahead and talk about, just for a second, a case study we had at a civil engineering firm. This is definitely not the largest client that's gone down this route, but this was an interesting case study because they had basically every possible use case that you can envision with an organization, and we were able to leverage Prism Cloud to really enhance their overall functionality and security. These guys were a existing Palo Alto shop, so they have gateways. They have we were backhauling everything across either MPLS or VPN. Everything's redundant with these guys. So that was all coming across one of those 2 pathways. The big benefit here was we were able to offload about 80% or about 40% of the traffic from the data center and free that up for other uses, other business uses. We had their corporate data centers actually co-located with one of their primary offices there. So getting all the remote traffic, or at least 40% of the bandwidth cleared up for local access, was a huge benefit for the workers there. These guys deal with very, very large files, as you can imagine, from a civil engineering perspective, and freeing that up to pass those around and push them to the appropriate work sites or the remote users is a huge benefit. There's a number of other interesting things about this particular client in that they have a large number of VPN profiles. So they have a combination of offices where design work is done and field offices where actual construction type endeavors go on. And being able to tie all of those in with whatever local bandwidth was available has been hugely beneficial to the overall success of some of their projects. In addition, they have a number of at the construction sites. They have a number of unattended or headless type devices that we were able to actually tie into the system as well. That do things like construction reporting and progress reporting, things of that nature. So this has been overall a very, very beneficial solution for this organization, and it really shows a lot of the ways that this solution can be used to support a flexible number of options and working environments. So that's about all I wanted to cover here. But if you have more questions at the end, I'll be happy to take those because this is fairly fascinating.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael.
Turn it over to Tony here, and he can run through some more of this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. So, really, we wanted to take a minute here and focus on Insight's capabilities. And really, Insight has, identified a couple of key focus areas to make it easier. We do have, our governance, everything really kind of starts from a governance, risk, and compliance perspective. So we do have former CISOs on the team, really focused on policy, procedures, standards, gap analysis against industry standard and compliance frameworks such as NIST, ISO, PCI, HIPAA High Trust, GDPR, CCPA, really kind of starting from a foundational aspect and always kind of tying back to that core governance, risk, and compliance. We do have a testing and assessment focus area. We offer over 35 different very focused assessments, anything from vulnerability to pen testing. And then when we get into, cloud security and security controls, from a cloud security perspective, really, and security controls, really kind of same methodologies, an agnostic approach, focused on really strategic partnerships like Palo Alto Networks, through the entire engagement model. And when we talk about that, we have the initial consultation, where we are, understanding your requirements, identifying the use cases, helping you define the decision criteria, understanding the current state, proposing a future state, getting into the design architecture, the implementation, operationalization, and optimization, and then management in some cases. And that's across your entire footprint. Insight offers over 160 security products. So therefore, we have the opportunity, not only from a security controls perspective, but a cloud perspective, to approach your problem agnostically and look across the entire environment. And then Rachel?
Thanks, Tony. So there's a couple of resources. We'll be sending out a follow-up email to this webinar with some new security guides, the case study that was covered today. And of course, if you have any questions, you can find us on LinkedIn. Our website links are there for both Palo Alto and Insight. And with that, we'll be taking questions. One question that came in for you guys, what is typical deployment time for Prism Access?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Go ahead. No, I will defer.
So we've seen anywhere from a POC being able to stand up in 6 to 8 hours to a full-blown deployment for thousands of users in literally just days.
Another question that came in too, what are some of the competitor products to Prisma and how does this stack up?
So I'll go ahead and hop in there. There's any number of VPN solutions that are out there. Cisco AnyConnect is one that's often talked about. Any number of secure web gateways. When they talk about something that is more in line with what we're offering, oftentimes we'll see Zscaler brought up. Zscaler has 2 different solutions. They have ZIA, which is connectivity out to the cloud for both your branch and your retail. For your branch and your mobile users. If you want connectivity back into the data center, it is a separate solution. I believe it's called ZPA. The difference is there, obviously, 2 solutions, 2 UIs. more management overhead. They do, and again, please, if you're interested, please talk with the Insight folks, talk with the Zscaler folks. I am by no means an expert in my competitors' products. I wouldn't expect them to be experts in mine, but they do build out their own infrastructure. They're not cloud scalable. So they have a lot of the limitations we talked about previously in both scalability. They have segmented clouds, so when they talk about the number of POPs that they have available, that is all in, but customers are signing up to individual clouds, so they have much smaller number of POPs available. And then lastly, it's the cloud-based solution anyway, is, or the access, the secure web gateway, if you will. So access out to SaaS and web and public cloud is a proxy-based solution. So it's going to have the same limitations that a proxy would, right? I think those are largely the competitors we see. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, I wanted to add to that. I'm glad that you took the first stab representing Palo Alto Networks. But from my perspective as an architect, I see the difference being mostly in terms of the breadth of the platform, not necessarily in the point product kind of parity and feature comparison. And that is that Prism Access ties into a much broader portfolio of different security components, including endpoint protection, including the on-premises firewalls, including something like Cortex XDR and Prisma Public Cloud, and all of the kind of ongoing integrations that are happening in that space in the Palo Alto Networks platform, versus putting Zscaler up against Prism Access. There's not really an answer to a lot of those other platforms or those other components of a security play. Or let's get everything under one umbrella, so to speak, or at least have integration so that this event here in this platform or this product is correlated natively with an event over here in this other product. That's where I see the biggest difference, in addition to the ones that David just went over.
Yeah, Victor, I can dovetail off of that. And, David, thank you so much for the overview. Really what we're seeing across the board with, most of our clients, not all of our clients, is, really within the last 12 to 18 months, a focus on, consolidation of infrastructure, right, and evaluation of their current security tools, whether that initiative is, around going to the cloud or segmentation or, compliance, really identifying some of those key platforms, such as Palo Alto Networks, that have a whole host of security capabilities, and helping, our clients utilize, their budget and resources effectively aligned to, some of those key platform plays in those types of efforts. We've been very successful, just like Michael Pratt went through earlier.
I don't see any other questions at this time. So I think with that, we will wrap up the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining today, and we will be sending a follow-up email.